Have you ever found yourself just staring at a screen, scrolling and scrolling through endless search results, feeling, well, more overwhelmed than actually informed?
Oh, absolutely. You're looking for that one specific thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the sheer amount of information out there just turns it into this massive chore. It's a challenge I think we all face now.
Yeah, it's often called the information explosion. And it's very real. I mean, information gets created in so many different ways, different formats.
Right.
And what users need, what you need, is just growing incredibly fast. Libraries, well, they've been grappling with this for decades, really head on.
And here's the thing that might surprise you, as it did me. We often think of libraries as, quiet places, bookshelves, maybe a bit traditional. But they've actually been these quiet innovators, right at the forefront of tackling this exact problem. They've used information and communication technology, ICT and automation, to completely change how we get to knowledge.
It's actually quite remarkable how these institutions, which seem pretty conventional on the surface, have adapted. They've become these incredible digital gateways.
Making information not just available, but findable, discoverable.
Exactly. And dynamic, too. Much more than just static pages.
Okay, so let's really dive deep into this transformation. Our mission today really is to unpack how ICT has just fundamentally reshaped libraries.
Right.
From those really early, kind of simple applications right up to the complex network systems we see today.
And all of this ultimately is about making information access faster, easier, and just more comprehensive for you, the person using the library.
So the core insight, that sort of aha moment,
Yeah.
it wasn't just about being more efficient, was it?
No, not at all. I think the bigger realization was that this technology could fundamentally, democratize knowledge.
How so?
It shifted libraries from being just physical buildings full of stuff to these boundless digital gateways, basically tearing down the walls of access and bringing information right to your fingertips, wherever you are, whenever you need it.
Okay, so before we trace that whole journey, let's get our terms straight. We're throwing around ICT and automation. What do we actually mean in a library context?
Well, ICT is really an umbrella term. It covers basically all the technologies used for handling and communicating information.
Okay.
You can think of it in two main parts. First, there are the networks, wireless, satellites, broadcasting, all that connection stuff.
Right, the plumbing.
Kind of, yeah. And second, the applications, the tools we actually use on those networks. Things like the internet itself, database systems, multimedia tools.
So it's not just the computer on the desk.
Mhm.
It's how it connects and what software it runs.
Precisely. One definition I like frames ICTs as technologies for handling info and facilitating communication, capturing, storing, processing, sending, displaying, the whole life cycle.
And it's not just the shiny new tech.
Right. No, exactly. A broader view includes what we might think of as old tech, radio, TV, even the basic telephone.
Huh.
The key thing is how all these different technologies, old and new, now sort of mesh together to create this networked world we live in.
That paints a much bigger picture. But just having the tools isn't enough, is it? The real shift happens when things become automatic. So let's unpack automation. Where does that word even come from?
It's got quite an interesting origin, actually. It comes from the Greek word automos.
Automos.
Yeah, meaning spontaneous motion or self-movement. But its first sort of industrial use, the way we think of it now, was by a guy named D.S. Harder.
Oh, what's this?
Back in 1936, at General Motors, believe it or not. He used it to describe the automatic handling of parts moving between different stages of production.
So factories first, then it's spread.
Pretty much. Webster's dictionary defines it as the techniques of making an apparatus, a process, or a system operate automatically. And the Oxford English Dictionary adds that it's often about using electronic or mechanical devices to replace human labor.
Right. So in libraries, how does that translate?
In the library world, automation basically means using computers' automatic or semi-automatic machines to do those traditional library jobs. Things like checking books out, cataloging, basically minimizing the amount of manual human effort needed.
So it's often used alongside library computerization.
Yeah, they're often used almost interchangeably. The core idea is systems operating by themselves or with minimal intervention.
Okay, definition's clear. Now, let's step back in time. When did this whole digital shift really kick off in libraries? I was amazed to read that the first known use of, data automation in a library was way back in 1936.
It's surprisingly early, isn't it? The University of Texas adapted some kind of mechanical punch card system for circulation, checking books in and out.
Wow. before computers as we know them, really.
Exactly. Computers started appearing in U.S. libraries in the early 1950s, but their use was pretty limited at first.
Why was that?
Mostly cost. The hardware was incredibly expensive, and there just wasn't much specialized software available for library tasks.
Right. So what was the breakthrough?
A really pivotal moment was the MRC project. That stands for Machine Readable Cataloging.
Well,
The Library of Congress kicked it off in 1963. The goal was to create a standard format for cataloging information so libraries could share it.
standardization. That sounds crucial.
It was huge. It evolved pretty quickly. AMR came out in '66 and AMR 7 by '69. This was a total game changer for sharing bibliographic data. Suddenly, libraries weren't all doing the same cataloging work in isolation.
Makes sense. So MRC paved the way.
It really did. By the late 1960s, you started seeing online, real-time interactive computer systems pop up in libraries. The Online Public Access Catalog, the OPAC, what you use to search the library online.
Yeah.
That was actually in its experimental stages in the U.S. back then.
Yeah.
And we also saw the start of these big cooperative systems like OCLC, the Ohio College Library Center, set up in 1967.
What did they do?
They allowed libraries to pool resources and share cataloging efforts on a massive scale, really built on that MRC foundation.
Okay, so the 60s laid the groundwork. What about the 70s and 80s?
Well, the 80s really saw things accelerate. Online systems, networks, things like optical discs and CD-ROMs became more common.
Ah, CD-ROMs.
Yeah.
Remember those?
Yeah. And critically, microcomputers, personal computers, finally started making their way into libraries in a big way.
Right, making it more affordable, presumably.
Definitely. And then, of course, the internet and more sophisticated library networks eventually allowed pretty much all the core library processes to become integrated. It's funny, the term information technology, IT, which we use all the time now,
Yeah.
it actually first showed up in a big library database, Lisa, back in 1975, but it didn't really become common usage until the early 80s.
Interesting. So it took a while to catch on. Now, this is largely a U.S.-centric story so far.
Yeah.
What about other parts of the world? India, for example.
Right, it's a global story. In India, the Indian Statistical Institute in Calcutta was actually a very early adopter. They installed a computer system way back in 1955.
55.
Yeah, and in SDOC, the Indian National Scientific Documentation Center was a real pioneer too.
What did they do?
In '64 and '65, they were already using computers to create indexes for the Indian Science Abstract. And later, in 1978, they launched an SDI service.
Yeah.
Selective dissemination of information. Basically pushing relevant research papers or abstracts out to scientists based on their interests. Proactive information delivery.
That sounds quite advanced for the 70s.
It was. And the 70s also saw library networks starting to emerge across India. This was largely thanks to an organization called NISSAT, which provided initiative and, crucially, funding.
Like OCLC in the U.S.
Sort of, yeah. This led to important networks like CalibNet in Calcutta, Delnet in Delhi, and InflibNet, which was a national university network.
And InflibNet was particularly important.
Yes, InflibNet really acted as a catalyst. It provided funding, but also helped establish standards for automation across university libraries. It helped move things beyond just scattered individual efforts.
Okay, so we've seen how it happened. But why? Why did libraries feel this massive push to automate? What were the driving forces?
Well, at its core, it was really about survival and staying relevant. We mentioned the information explosion.
Right, just too much stuff.
Exactly. Manual systems just couldn't cope. Plus, user demands were growing. People needed information faster in more convenient ways.
And physical space limitations, too, I imagine. Books take up room.
Definitely. And the old manual processes, think card catalogs, stamping due dates, they just became incredibly inefficient, unwieldy, and seriously time-consuming as collections and user numbers grew.
Trying to manage millions of items and requests by hand? Yeah, I can see that wouldn't scale.
Not at all. And you also had information coming in all sorts of new formats, not just books. Plus, users had increasingly diverse and complex needs. Manual systems were clearly hitting a wall.
So, faced with these pressures, what were the main goals? What did libraries hope to achieve by automating?
The primary aims were pretty clear. First, speed. Speeding up routine work and giving you faster access to information.
Makes sense.
Second, control. Getting much better oversight over the collections and library operations, knowing what you have, where it is, who has it.
Okay.
Third, efficiency. reducing all that repetitive manual work and avoiding duplication of effort, like multiple libraries cataloging the same book.
Right.
They also wanted to build better systems for storage and retrieval, obviously, and not just improve existing services, but create entirely new services that just weren't possible before.
Like what?
Things like online databases, remote access, instant renewals, services we kind of take for granted now.
Gotcha. What else?
Making better use of staff time, freeing up librarians from routine tasks to do more complex work like research support.
That's a big one.
Huge. And critically, enabling cooperation. Automation and networks allowed libraries to share resources, coordinate collections, and work together much more effectively.
Like those networks we talked about.
Exactly. And a central goal was having centralized, computerized bibliographic records, basically. A single searchable database for everything the library holds.
Now, you mentioned cost earlier. People might think automation saves money. Is that the main driver?
That's a really common misconception. The truth is, library automation is usually a very expensive undertaking.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You've got the initial costs of hardware, software licenses, the massive task of converting old records into digital format data entry.
Right, cataloging the existing collection.
Exactly. Then there's ongoing maintenance, upgrades, storage costs. It adds up. So the main aim isn't necessarily lower costs, but cost efficiency.
What's the difference?
It's about getting more value for the money spent, improving the quality, the speed, the effectiveness of services so dramatically that it justifies the investment. Better service delivery, broader access, more impact, that's the efficiency gain, even if the absolute cost is higher.
That's a really important distinction. Value over just raw cost cutting. So if a library decides, okay, we need to do this, what are the crucial first steps? What does the preparation look like?
Well, the very first thing is a really honest assessment. Do we actually need this level of automation right now? And crucially, can we afford it? Not just the initial purchase, but the whole life cycle cost.
So a reality check.
Absolutely. Then you need technical knowledge, understanding computer hardware, understanding software options, and making sure they'll actually work together properly. Compatibility is key.
And budgeting, you mentioned. That sounds critical.
It is. You need sufficient funds allocated up front, not just for the flashy hardware, but for all those ongoing costs. Software renewals, data conversions, storage, maintenance, future upgrades.
It's long-term commitment.
Definitely. And if funds are tight, it's often much smarter to prioritize automating the most critical areas, first maybe circulation and the catalog, rather than trying to do everything at once with insufficient resources. Phased implementation.
Makes sense. What about the people involved, the library staff?
Ah, yes. Perhaps the most critical piece. Training. You absolutely must invest in training the staff.
Why is that so vital?
Because the best, most expensive technology in the world is useless if the staff don't know how to use it effectively or if they're resistant to it. They need to be proficient and comfortable with the computers and the specific software chosen so they can actually deliver those improved services efficiently. Tech is a tool, people make it work.
Right. Empowering the staff is key to the whole thing succeeding. Okay, let's shift to the library in action. How did ICT actually reshape those day-to-day bread and butter library operations, the housekeeping, as it's sometimes called?
Well, ICT completely revolutionized them. It's what turned traditional libraries into these hybrid, digital, or even virtual libraries we see now. It automates jobs, frees up time for everyone's staff and you, the user.
Okay, give me an example. Let's start with acquisitions, getting new materials.
Right. Acquisitions used to involve tons of paperwork, pre-order searching to avoid duplicates, typing up orders, mailing them, tracking them, processing invoices, accessioning the books. Very manual.
Sounds tedious.
It was. Automated systems streamline all of that. They provide accurate, real-time records for ordering, receiving, managing funds. Pre-order checks are instant. Orders can often be sent electronically. Follow-ups can be automated. It just gets new materials onto the shelves or onto the servers much, much faster and with fewer errors.
Big improvement. What about things like magazines or journal serials? They seem tricky.
They are because they're ongoing. You've got subscriptions, renewals, checking in each individual issue as it arrives, claiming missing issues from the publisher, tracking spending against different budgets.
Yeah, that sounds like a logistical headache.
It can be. Automation provides really tight control over all that. Systems can flag upcoming renewals, make check-ins super fast, often with barcode scanning, automatically generate claims for missing items, and keep precise budget records. It tames the chaos.
Okay, and then there's cataloging. We mentioned MRC earlier. How did automation change the way libraries organize everything?
Cataloging is how you find stuff, right? Computer-based cataloging, especially using that standardized MRC format, was revolutionary. It changed how the descriptive data about a book or resource, the metadata, is created, shared, and searched.
So instead of drawers full of cards.
Exactly. You have electronic records. Each record has defined fields for author, title, subject, etc., following the MRC standard. This allows libraries everywhere to share and reuse cataloging data, saving enormous amounts of work.
And that leads directly to the OPAC.
Right, the online public access catalog. That's the user interface, the search system you interact with. It takes that MRC data and lets you search it easily online. You can see what the library owns, if it's available, where it is, often with different display options, like a brief record or the full details. It's your window into the collection.
Available from anywhere with internet, usually.
Typically, yes. Huge accessibility improvement over having to physically go to the card catalog.
What about checking items in and out? Circulation, that must have been an early target for automation.
Oh, absolutely. One of the first and most impactful areas. Automated circulation systems manage all the borrower information registration, giving you a unique ID, checking your borrowing privileges. They track all the item data, link items to borrowers, and handle all the administrative stuff, like calculating due dates based on library calendars.
And actual transactions.
Super streamlined. Issuing items, handling returns, processing renewals, calculating and managing fines, placing holds or reservations on items that are currently checked out. It handles all of that automatically. Plus, it generates reports for library managers, overdue notices, usage statistics, etc.
And barcodes play a big role here, right?
A massive role. Barcoding technology is ubiquitous in automated circulation. That little striped label on the book and on your library card, it allows for incredibly fast and accurate optical scanning. It represents data visually. This saves an immense amount of time compared to typing numbers, drastically reduces errors, and just makes the whole checkout, check-in process so much more efficient for both the library staff and for you.
No more handwritten cards or manual stamping.
Exactly. Huge time saver, much more accurate.
So acquisition, serials, cataloging, circulation, those are the big housekeeping ones. Are there other areas where ICT made a difference?
Oh, definitely. It permeated almost everything. General library management things like accounting, budgeting, staff scheduling. Interlibrary loans, requesting items from other libraries became much easier electronically.
Right.
Managing audiovisual collections, and importantly, information storage and retrieval itself, building specialized databases, indexing large collections, creating searchable abstracts. Also, reference services giving librarians better tools to answer your questions.
So it really touched every corner of the library's operation.
Pretty much, yeah. A total transformation behind the scenes.
Okay, so we've covered the back-end changes. Let's flip it around. What does all this mean for me, the user? How have automation and networking really changed my experience of using a library?
Fundamentally, it's about empowerment. It gives you, the user, much speedier and easier access to a vastly wider range of information, often from wherever you happen to be.
Not just within the library walls.
Exactly. Remote access is key. This massively enhances user satisfaction. You can tap into potentially unlimited information from different sources. And networked resources allow information to be combined and reshaped in powerful new ways, leading to new discoveries.
Breaking down barriers, making knowledge flow more freely. What are some specific services I might expect now?
Well, first off, that web access to the OPEC we mentioned, being able to search the library's collection 24/7 from your own device makes planning your research or finding your next read incredibly convenient.
Definitely.
Then there's electronic document delivery. If your library doesn't have an article you need, they can often request a digital copy from another library and have it delivered straight to your email or desktop. Much faster than traditional mail-based interlibrary loan.
Wow, that's huge. No more waiting weeks.
Potentially, yes. And access to networked information resources is enormous. Libraries subscribe to vast arrays of online databases, collections of electronic journals, digital encyclopedias, government documents, resources from countless publishers, all accessible through the library portal.
So much more than just the books on the local shelves.
Oh, vastly more. And that information can often be delivered right to your desktop or laptop or tablet. You can access these rich electronic resources from your computer center, an internet cafe, your office, or your home. Access anytime, anywhere.
Convenience is a recurring theme here.
It really is. Libraries also often provide online instructions, tutorials on how to use specific databases effectively, maybe virtual tours of the library building or website, helping you navigate the resources.
And what about getting help or recommendations?
That's changed too. Online readers advisory services, maybe email alerts about new books in your area of interest, or curated lists on the website, and virtual reference desks, where you can chat online or email with a librarian to get help with your research questions.
So like having a librarian on call digitally.
Pretty much. It makes the interaction much more proactive and personalized, even if you can't physically visit the library. It transforms that relationship.
Okay, wow. We have covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We certainly have.
From, nailing down what ICT and automation actually mean in this context to uncovering those surprisingly early origins, that 1936 system in Texas, all the way to how these technologies now shape almost every aspect of daily library work. And most importantly, I think, how all that behind-the-scenes change directly benefits you when you're trying to find information or enjoy what the library offers.
Yeah, we tracked that evolution, from libraries struggling with manual processes under that information explosion to becoming these really sophisticated digital hubs.
Right.
Leveraging everything from the structure of MRC records to the simple genius of a barcode to the global reach of the internet, all aimed at making services better, faster, more accessible.
So, thinking about all this, where do we go from here? Libraries have clearly shown they can adapt, constantly finding new ways to connect people with information. And technology isn't standing still, is it?
Not at all. New tools for managing and accessing data are emerging all the time. AI, machine learning.
Exactly. So what do you think the next frontier might be? How could libraries make knowledge even more accessible, maybe more intuitive, perhaps more personalized for each of us in this world where data just keeps growing exponentially?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It really makes you wonder how we'll be finding and using information, say, 10 years down the line. Something to think about.